Hello and welcome to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. Our show where we talk about all things abundant living. Yes, in the traditional sense of faith and finance. We're talking about just making the most of life, making the most of what God gave us to be good stewards of all the blessings of our lives, and also really using that to make impact on the broader world, because that's what we're here to do. We're here so God can use us to do great things to advance his kingdom. Listen, it's such a great pleasure to be back with you, and I got a great guest who's coming back to us for a second time. But let me tell you about what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, we're in a new economy because we have a new presidential administration. Everything's changing, as always. But there's still great opportunities for you to advance yourself economically, and one of those areas of advancement is real estate. So listen, we know from Deuteronomy 8:18 that God gives us the capacity to build wealth. But it's up to us to take the initiative to exercise that capacity. And we do that also by gathering wisdom from people who know. We have a great guest to talk about that when we talk about faith and finance and the capacity to create wealth. That means we got to talk to people with the wisdom to teach us how to do that and to apply that capacity. Listen, we're going to have a great conversation with Pastor Dexter Jenkins, who's the author of the Real Estate Wealth Creator Blueprint. Stay tuned. We will be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., and we are here talking about all things faith, finance, and abundant living. Listen, we have all kinds of guests on this show, and we talk about everything from personal finance to ministry to managing your money in your household, education, leadership development. But one of our favorite topics is about wealth creation. And we, again, Deuteronomy 8:18 tells us that God gives us the capacity to produce wealth. But it's up to us to lean in, stand on faith, and exercise that capacity. One of the areas of wealth creation, I would argue might be the original form of wealth going back to the Garden of Eden, is real estate management. Yes, God created heaven and earth, then he put Adam and Eve on earth, and one of their primary job was to manage the property, to manage everything on that property, and then make sure that it was fruitful and productive in value. Listen, a lot has happened since Adam and Eve, as we know, but we still have opportunities given to us by God to leverage real estate as a source of wealth creation. My guest today, man, he's been on the show before, I'm so glad he's coming back, is a faith leader, but who's also someone who's an expert on real estate wealth creation. Please welcome to the show, Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, who is the author of the Real Estate Wealth Creator Blueprint. Hey, Pastor Dexter, it's so good to have you back.
Man, I'm excited to be back with you guys. So that means if y'all invited me back, I must have did all right the first time.
Oh, no doubt, you did better than all right. Listen, give me an update of what's happened since the last time we talked to you.
Well, last time I was on the show, which I don't know if it's quite been a year, but we were in the process of writing our book. So we finished that up. It was released on Kindle in January, and so it released as a #1 in real estate and sales, those two categories, and on Kindle and on Amazon. And so that's just where we are right now, really just promoting the book and obviously doing the things I'm doing with my family and the church and all that. So been busy, but life has been good.
Well, you reintroduce our audience. Of course, some of us listening and watching will know, but we have new audience members. I've always was fascinated by your journey to be doing obviously what you do now. Is God inspired, but you're a pastor, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about your church and your ministry. But also, you are a real estate expert, and you have a passion and expertise. And I think we're now past the stage when people didn't necessarily see success in business and finance and financial services going together. I think we now we have a certain amount of sophistication and maturity as Christians to understand that those two things go together in a way that I think previous generations had a problem with, this idea that pastors should be even paying attention to money and vice versa. My pastor is an accountant, for example, and he lives as an accountant. But talk to me about your journey to your calling to ministry, but your professional commitment to not only real estate and success for yourself, but this idea that you can educate people and minister to people so they can learn to, again, create wealth.
Exactly. Well, my story, Alfred, has always goes back to how I was brought up. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household, but then, so my dad was a barber, oh my God, for 6+ decades in New Haven, Connecticut. He passed away August of 2023. And then, but my mom was a woman of faith. And so every Sunday, my black behind was in church. Every Sunday.
I have one of those mamas too.
Yeah, one of those mamas too. Yeah, and so for me, it's always been a part of my life. And so, I tell people I got the faith side from my mom. I mean, not that my dad was the faith man, but he, he just a little more low key with his.
Right.
But he was very out front with, only real estate entrepreneurs. And so I guess just because I've lived like that I'll be 57 in June, it's always been part of my journey. So when I went to college for basketball, I was on the basketball scholarship at Northeastern University in Boston, and then I got it into financial services in my early 20s. And then I began to get a sense of God calling me to be, I didn't sense it as being a pastor, but, I have a deep love for the Bible. I believe the Bible is the ultimate success guide, so, when you guys talk about abundant living, my life verse is John 10:10. John, when Christ says that the thief comes but for to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that you may have life and have it what? More abundantly.
More abundantly.
So, that's been my thing is, okay, how do we use the Bible as not just something that we use on Sunday, but as a success manual? So I've always seen it as that. And so, I've always married all of those things. So the faith side from my mom, learning financial services. And then, my wife and I started our investment company in 2016, so we've been involved in millions of dollars real estate transactions since then. And so it's sort of thing of you really teach who you are. And so that's my journey in a nutshell.
One of the things that made me connect with you right away when I first met you, when you were last on the show, is, and I think I might have even said this to you, I say it all the time, so I'm going to say it again. My grandfather, who was, a late grandfather who was a Baptist preacher, a Baptist minister, once told me, he said there are preachers who give you heat but no light, and there are preachers that give you light with no heat.
Okay.
And that the best give you both. And this is what he said. He said the heat with no light, during the service, you're fired up. You're, oh my God. And then Monday, you don't remember what you heard, and you don't have anything to help you face the day. You don't.
Correct.
You apply. So he said the light with no heat teaches you, but it doesn't engage you.
Exactly.
You don't feel encouraged.
Yeah. It doesn't move you.
It doesn't move you.
It doesn't move you.
Yeah. And so he said the best preachers, and I say the best teachers, the best speakers, the best journalists, as far as I'm concerned, they educate you. Yes, it's light. There's enlightenment, but then there's, like you said, you're moved to take action.
Correct.
And so when I circle back to you and what you do both as a pastor and a real estate expert, and I speak to myself as someone who spends a lot of time as a financial journalist, it's the education part sometimes is the easy part. It's getting people to actually move on what they know. And I know I'm convicted myself in that way. I knew what to do often 10 years before I actually did it, because I had to overcome my own, that transformation of your thinking. Because I was raised in a working poor household. I achieved success, middle class success, education, etc. But it took me 10 years for my mind to catch up to.
Yes.
So talk to me, in time we have left in this.
Oh my God, Alfred, we could be here for hours talking about that, but because it's the paradigm shifts that we need to make. I'm often when I'm in meetings or I'm reading books, and my wife and I are in a season right now where we're looking to advance in a number of areas, and success often is a different language, and a lot of times, because of where you and I come from, maybe, we grew up in houses where maybe our parents or grandparents didn't have a lot of education per se. And then, we got our degrees and so on and so forth. And so we've, in many respects, we surpassed them, at least, professionally. Obviously, you never surpass them because they're not people. But, you surpass them, but then you recognize there are levels to this.
Yes.
And then you start talking to people who are like, oh my God, this is just a whole nother level of thinking. And so I get the information, but then oftentimes it takes a while for you to be able to get an emotion to really enact what you've learned. You know what I mean? So I say all
the time, both on this platform and other platforms, that for many Black people, for many people in general, but many Black people like you and I, our parents and grandparents are preparing us for a world that they don't understand. They'll never see, they'll never get to, but they got to prepare us anyway. And all they can do is prepare us to enter. They can't prepare us to operate in it because they've never been there. It's a foreign country. It's another planet. Listen, Pastor Dexter, great conversations. I knew it would be. We'll be back for the next segment. Listen, you're listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr. We're here with Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, real estate expert, faith leader. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. If you were here for our first segment, we're already on fire. So you need to get your notebook out. You need to get your Bible out if it's not already out, because we're about to fire you up and lighten you up. So, but listen, Pastor Dexter, we were talking about what the word says, that you're transformed by the renewal of your mind. Exactly. And often, depending on like I say, when you come from kind of background that we might have come from, I know you're saying you too, the outside will change before your mental changes.
Yes.
So you'll be at a job. I'll speak for myself. The money I made when I began my career out of college outstripped my mother multiple.
100%. 100%.
My mother had some college education. She never got so like you said, we surpass our parents and grandparents, not as human beings, like you said, but in terms of what we're able to accomplish and the places we're able to go in terms of education, income, professional training, even the careers that we pursue. Because I come from a family of mostly nurses and military, working, basically hardworking blue collar people. So talk about your focus both as a pastor and a real estate educator, about helping people to transform their thinking.
Yes.
If you have all this information, but you think the same way, then you get frustrated because you don't get any results. You're like, why am I not getting these results? And you're like, because you haven't transformed your mind. Talk about that.
And I think and where we are right now, Alfred, there's an abundance of information. I think when our people were coming up, parents, grandparents, there was a sort of a secret club that they couldn't get the information. Now we don't have that problem, man. There's an abundance. So, whether you on YouTube, meetups, there's always access to it. But even in the abundance of getting the information, now it goes from information to implementation. So, Alfred, this is one of my sayings. I said, information without implementation leads to frustration.
Yes.
And I believe that's where a lot of people are, because they don't know that you have to really, there's a transformation that takes place where, there's the be, do, and have principle. So the have, everybody wants to have more successful level, but then have I taken the time to become the person who can do the thing to have what I want? And so God is very much interested in your He's interested in your change, your transformation, more so than you having more money, more whatever it is, And so I just think that people, in many respects, have to recognize that this wealth creation game that we're talking about is all about you really developing yourself, and the money that you get and the assets that you get are really just the sort of the cherry on top, so to speak. You know what I mean? So
definitely, because one of the challenges that we have faced as human beings, especially when we're operating outside of the will of God, is we want the fruit without the tree.
Exactly.
Like
that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
But on the flip side, to go from information to application, means it takes action, and action almost always requires faith, especially when you don't come from, I tell people, I don't, at some point, all the study, all the research, all the YouTube videos and the books and advice in the world is not going to be a substitute for you saying, now I have to try it. Now I have to do it. And no, it may not, I probably won't get it right the first time. And
you won't. You won't.
You won't. But I am stepping out on faith.
Exactly.
And I tell you, faith is the bridge between impossible and possible.
Correct.
And as people of faith, we're not, that's why the phrase is exercising faith. Exercise actually do it.
Yes.
So with all that in mind, you're here because the last time we talked, you and your wife were working on it, but now it's here. You have this new book that we obviously urge our audience to get, especially if they're serious about wealth creation and looking at real estate as an option. The Real Estate Wealth Creator Blueprint. Talk to me about what inspired the book.
Yes.
And what you're providing to people who might read, buy, hopefully share the book with others.
Right. Well, I mean, Alfred, this book for me is really, like I've talked about earlier, it's just a manifestation of my life. Like I said, my dad was a big real estate. He wouldn't have called himself that, but as I'm looking back on it, that's what he was. He was a big real estate guy. He always said to me, Dexter, you want to control where you live and where you work.
Yeah, that's the word.
So I lived in a house that from the time I was 8 to that I still actually own. When my dad passed, he left it down to me, and then he owned my dad had a barbershop that he had in 1991 is when he opened it, but he owned the physical building where he had his barbershop. And so that mentality has just always been in me. It's about this thing called control. And so really what I'm endeavoring to do to this book is I'm trying to, anybody who listen, I'm telling people, hey, we need to get serious about wealth creation. You need to get serious in a time like we've never done before. If you want to be in control of your life, you got to take control of this wealth creation. And I think real estate is just one of the best. It's not the only way to do it, but it's one of the best ways to do it. And so that's really the two big messages on that. Get serious about wealth creation, and for most people, I believe real estate is one of the best ways to do.
And you make an important point. There's no such thing as one single investment.
No, of course not.
You do exclude everyone else. It's about diversification. It's about, and obviously you'll have different goals and needs during the course of your life, where you want to put your investments when you're 45 will be different than you would do when you're 20.
25, exactly.
Right. But what we want to do, and as someone who's been in this kind of financial education game with Black Enterprise for now going on 4 decades, the thing I always tell people, and I urge the people on this show, no matter where you are, you should start where you are.
Correct.
If you're young, if you're 17, 18, 20, and you're at the front end of this, in other words, the earlier you start, the less money it takes, and the more you can afford to make mistakes.
Correct.
Like you may not have a family yet. You may not.
Right.
If everything doesn't work out, okay, well, I Pastor Dexter, I tell people all the time, if I just had the money I spent in clubs between the ages of 28, if I took like 20% of that and invested it in something.
Not just you, all of us, clothes and things that have very little value. Very little value.
And you forget about it. You don't remember what, And so I tell that the younger you start learning about investing in real estate, the younger you start learning about the stock market, the younger you start, and not just say, oh, I learned about it, I saw a YouTube video, but put some money toward it. Just because that first money is tuition towards your financial education.
Correct.
And then you eventually actually make money. So I emphasize, this is a great book it's a great book for everybody, but it's a great book for younger people so they can get a running start on this idea. Like you said, multi-generational wealth creation. It's just so important.
Yeah, because I think, sometimes we can beat ourselves up because we didn't start earlier.
Yeah.
And you really do have to that's just where you were at the time. I think Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better.
That's true.
So that's just where we were in our 20s and our 30s. And then so it does become the message of how can we instill these concepts in our children much younger, but then also, Alfred, one of my biggest messages are the people who in our age group, 40s and 50s. It's not too late for you.
It's
Because
never too
a lot
late.
of times they begin, well, my time is past. I'm just like, no, you have life experiences that if you learn how to tell a correct story, you can monetize it. And so, I'm always about, and I love what you're doing about this. I don't know if your people know about this, with your age thing, and you're talking about aging.
Oh yeah.
And this whole science around that. I'm just like, oh my God, that is such a needed message in our community, because particularly Black folks, we start to getting 50, I'm old, I'm over the hill. And I'm like, no, you got a lot more left in the tank, that if you would just get after it a little bit, your life would change.
Yeah, listen, we're going to stick a pin in that, because I'm going to jump. You're right. I'm passionate about that topic for my own personal self, but like others of our generation, if
Yes.
50. So listen, guys, we're on fire. We're going to keep it burning. This is Alfred Edmond Jr., your host. I'm here with Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, real estate expert and faith leader. This is Be Lifted Up Radio. We will be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., and we're here with Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, real estate expert, faith leader. And Pastor Dexter, we were talking about, like, we made the point earlier that, the earlier you start, the better.
Yeah.
Young people really need to jump on this book and jump on their financial education, and not just learn it for the sake of learning it, but actually take action, because they're young enough to be able to absorb the risk if things don't go great right away. But as we said, and I'm personally passionate about this, both in terms of finance, and I'm a major health health and fitness and longevity enthusiast. Some say influencer. I'll at least say I'm an enthusiast about this idea that it's not, you can be 50, you can be 55, you could be 60. I'll be 65 in a few weeks.
Okay.
And it's not only is it not too late, my message is a different message. You are likely going to live at least a decade longer than your parents. I saw a statistic that until recently, the average life expectancy was only 30 years old in human history.
Right.
So I'm saying now it's not only that it's not too late, the saddest thing that you can see is someone who outlives the resources that they have.
Watch it now.
So now financial planning, and there's this new area of financial planning called longevity planning.
Okay.
It's like, okay, when you're 50, you're not trying to plan to make it to 65. You need to plan to make it to 75, 80, and Social Security may not get it there. You might not have a pension, because a lot of the pensions went away.
Pensions are pretty much gone.
Yeah, so you got to invest and see yourself as a wealth creator with between 20 and 40 years of life.
Correct.
And by the way, as people of faith, when we say we trust God to provide for us, we should be assuming that God will provide.
Correct.
God doesn't run out of wealth because you turn 80.
Just turn you turn 80.
So this is an important thing, I think, for people who are past the age of 40 and 50. And one of the things I tell people, that most of the wealthy people in this world made most of their money after
50.
No matter what they did for a living.
For most men.
Yes.
After 50, because there's a lot of foolishness that we go through in our 20s and 30s, and you clubbing and partying and doing chasing skirts and whatever else. And then now you get serious about life, and you're like, hold up, man, I'm getting up there. I need to do some things. And then you get serious about your call on your life, because this is a faith-based thing. So there's a call at you, and you find that. And when you get in it, and then God begins to bring the partnerships and things you need to go, and then next thing you know, you're taking off. And so I just think that's why I love what you're doing with this age thing, man. It really, the age thing you're doing, and then the alcohol thing that you've been talking about.
But
those two things, I was like, amen, because we need more people talking about God expects you to get better as you get older.
Yes.
Not get worse. Now, the world thinks you should get worse, but God's mentality is you should, as you get better, you should age. And now there are biblical examples of that being. Moses died at 120. It said he climbed the mountain and died at 120.
Yes.
I could just go on. This is not the topic.
No. But your point is, like, again,
we can go on and on with just that, but it's just this thing of, now we're tying into money, because like you said, if I'm expecting to only have money to 65. What do I do at 65 and I live another 20 or 30 or 40 years?
Yes.
So that's why I'm always in this thing of you should never slow down, because wealth creation is all about ingenuity, wisdom, and that never shuts off. So that shouldn't shut off because you're 65. Now we shut it off a lot of times, but from God's perspective, he's always downloading. And so now it goes back to what you said earlier. It's this thing called faith. Watch this, it's this word called courage.
Yes.
You know, and so I mean, and we should be the most courageous people out there because we got backup.
Right, exactly.
We got backup and forward.
And circling back to your point earlier about the Bible not just being a reference for scripture when you're sitting in the pews on Sundays.
Right.
It is a life guide.
Life guide.
It has examples, you know. I mean, practically everybody except for maybe the royalty in the Bible were entrepreneurs.
100%.
You know, fishermen, tax collectors, which is still a business. They were real estate. Obviously, real estate is the obvious one. And I say, when you look at the model of the Bible as a life guide, it's also a wealth building guide.
You look at it, you look at it quite differently when you come from that perspective. And that was because that was my frustration as a young boy. I just didn't see the relevance of it Monday through Saturday. And so it was cool on Saturday. You know, go up Sunday, you go to church and hang out, meet your friends, and great people at church and supportive environment and all that. But on Monday afternoon, I'm like, okay, well, I wasn't thinking about no Bible. I was thinking about other things. And so, one of the things I encourage people to do is this: read one chapter in the book of Proverbs every day and read one chapter in the New Testament. Now, the book of Proverbs, I have my congregation reading because, in my opinion, it's the greatest book on practical book on success, finance, and business.
Yes.
So when we're recording today's, I think today is the 10th. So I have my people read Proverbs chapter 10, and then today's proverb was lazy hands make people poor, but diligent hands bring wealth. Okay, so now I get to apply that to my life. Okay, am I lazy in some areas? And is this the reason why I'm possibly not going as far as I can go in my career, my business? And then, what does it mean to be diligent? Well, diligent is not only a product of me working hard, it's also a product of me working smart.
Smart.
And hard.
Right.
Because hard, this, Alfred, and I'm looking behind you, and I see Reginald Lewis behind you, because of Black History Month, and I read his book years ago. Well, the man didn't become a billionaire because he was working hard. He was working hard and smart. That's what diligence is.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing about our culture, as I would say, as Black people in general. Obviously, we're not a monolith, but I'll just speak from my family history. We got the working hard part down.
The work ethic is
generation after generation. Please. Working hard is not the issue.
Do that.
In fact, we got to learn how to take a break. That's the other thing. I've had to learn not to. I said, and again, I'm passionate about health. Like, God didn't mean for us to run ourselves into the ground.
Right.
But we got the hard work part. But we also learn, as you said, hard work without wisdom, without strategy, without knowledge, it results in you just kind of working yourself into the ground without anything to really show for it or pass on to the next generation. Yeah. So again, I just think your work is so important, not just your book, but your broader message about when God gives us the capacity to create wealth, it goes far beyond just hard work.
Right.
That there has to be a commitment to, we already said, mental transformation, has to be a commitment to learning from others, sharing information and learning. And I do want to, we still have time in this segment, so I want to, start it off with this conversation, but if we run out of time, we'll pick up in the next segment. Talk to me about the potential of your message and this book for fellow faith leaders to introduce this to their congregations. Now, let's be fair. Not every pastor is an accountant, like mine is. Not every pastor is a real estate expert, and nor should they be.
Exactly.
Each of us has gifts and talents we bring.
Everybody got a call in their life.
Exactly. But to the degree that you can spread wisdom, you say, listen, I'm not a real estate expert. Or I think about our good friend DeForest B. Suarez and the D. Free Move, financial education.
Exactly. Yep.
About he did that to create opportunities for other churches to build programs and initiatives in their church around that. And I see the same thing for a book like yours. I mean, if we could lean into this idea, and I want on the other side of the break, I want you to kind of talk about what your hopes might be for faith leaders across the country to say, listen, you may not be a real estate expert. You may not have real estate experts in your church, but this book and other resources can be used, and now I'm on my pulpit, to put together ministries of education around the country to help the congregations around the country learn what they need to learn, again, to live an abundant life in this way, which is what this show is all about. It's about spreading the word. But listen, I know I set it all up. We're about to go into our break. This is Alfred Edmond Jr. I'm your host. We're here with our guest, Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, real estate expert, faith leader. Stay tuned. Be Lifted Up Radio. We will be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. here with Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins. And the point of this show, Pastor, is to take what knowledge we have and spread it.
Correct.
Plant seeds in the minds of others so that it could take root. I have this saying, our producer and the creator of the show, Gwen Franklin, hears me say this all the time, that God created us to be vessels, not containers.
Watch out now.
Meaning whatever he gave to us wasn't just for us.
No, it was not.
It was meant to be directed through us. We are blessed by receiving it, but it wasn't to receive it just for us. And that's why I think of the work that you do as a pastor, the work you do. Your book is a way of taking this knowledge and planting the seeds, just the way pastors plant churches and other places. So with that in mind, and as I was talking as we ended our last segment, talk to me about the potential for this book to be used by other faith leaders to plant these seeds of, so we can create a generation of real estate investors who are taking advantage of these opportunities.
Well, I think it's the opportunity is, I think people historically would agree that one of the ways you could build wealth is through real estate. But I think what they haven't done is they haven't trusted the messenger.
Oh, yes.
So maybe it's come through some, I'm not going to throw it. It came to somebody that they didn't necessarily, who didn't look like them, or if it looked like them, they didn't have a faith undergirding it. You know what I mean? And so I think with what I talk about and what my passion has always been is to really to bridge the two, like what we talked about this whole show. How do we bridge the faith side with the practical financial side? And I just think real estate is just one of the avenues that we can use to do it. And then my gift is always to do it in a simplistic fashion where it's not over your head, where you can, to your point is, how can I get the information and then I implement it? Because as we know, this complexity is the enemy of execution. So if it's too complex, it's over my head. I think it's unachievable. And so really, my message is, if we can get this book in as many hands as possible. So right now it's on Kindle. It'll be coming out in hard book form in the next week or two on my website, which I'll share with you guys later on. But it really, I just think that this book and other books like that talk about financial literacy from a faith-based perspective really is an opportunity for us to spread the message of the gospel, because the gospel is good news. Yes. Yes. Good news that you don't have to be poor and love the Lord at the same time.
Amen.
That's just, that's really just been my passion. And as I've gone and I talk across the country, so whether I'm in a physical location or whether I'm, doing a podcast like this, the people who reach out to me who say, because this is what I know, Alfred, more than so than anything else. After you give your life to Christ and you love the Lord and all that, one of the biggest challenges, or one of probably the biggest challenge for his lordship, is money.
Yes.
100%. Meaning this, I spoke at a conference in Texas back in the last year, November. And I said, I said, many of you guys love the Lord. You would name yourself, you would call yourself a Christian or a kingdom person, whatever terminology you use. I said, but you ain't been to church in months. And the reason why you haven't been to church in months is this, because you bust your behind 6 days a week. And on the seventh day, when you could go to church, this is my one day to sleep, Pastor, or this is my one day to prepare for Monday.
Pastor. Now I
And
got
so,
my pastor just did a whole thing on this past Sunday on stewardship. And of course, he says everybody just thinks about the treasure part, the money part.
right.
He says, but no, it's time,
Time.
talent, and treasure. And he said the same thing. It's like you gave up all your time, and you're watching your clock. You gave 2 hours, and you can't wait to run out of here because you think you ain't got time to be here.
Yeah, hold up. The game is on, Pastor.
Oh, the game is what? He said, and the game ain't your salvation. All these things you're rushing for ain't what brought you to here. It ain't going to get you further. So I mean, I say all that because you led right into my next question or my next topic around stewardship. So you said, you can make money and love the Lord. And this is what I was convicted with, because again, everything that I tell you, I had to learn this too. Like I wasn't.
We're all growing, and
we're all growing.
Never arrived. You never have arrived.
So what was the word said? Loving the Lord is. Loving the Lord is serving others, right? That's stewardship.
Correct.
So you use the example of not having time. You're feeling like you don't have time to go to church. What I was convicted was I would always be like, oh, I would do more for others, but I'm just barely making it myself.
Right.
Because we believe the lie, really, and the devil is a liar, that I'm just got enough for me and mine.
Just for me and mine.
And Lord, I want to give more. I want to support. I want to build institutions. I want to solve problems in my community. And if I could just get another raise, Lord, if I could just,
right.
And the Lord says, at least said to me, I've given you everything you need.
Use what you got.
Use what you got. And you, just like the parable of the talents, use what I gave you wisely. One, I'll give you more.
Now to multiply back to you. Now
multiply back to you. And now you can take care of yourself and give to that charity or help that kid finish school or invest in that person's business. And so again, when we say, oh, I love the Lord, it's not a choice between making money, being provided for, and loving the Lord. If you're really loving the Lord, you're operating your finances, you're practicing stewardship in such a way that you can love people.
Correct.
Which is loving the Lord. Because
and think about this, Alfred. The essence of you making money is strictly service.
Yes.
The only way somebody pays you is if you serve somebody else, correct? Yeah. So we I mean, it's all in my book. I mean, it's just a paradigm shift that we within the body of Christ, and I think Black folks, oh my God, there's just something that we need to break out of, So, part of what my message has always been is really just trying to really talk straight to people, to get them to question some things, because in a lot of times when we for some reason when we get in the pew, we turn our brains off, and I'm just like, that makes no sense. You spend more time at work than any other place in your life, more than you spend at church, more than you spend with your family and all that. And so how can we, as opposed to just working hard, how can we work diligently and smart and create really one of my messages in my book is this thing called leverage. If you get nothing else out of this today, if you want to build wealth, you've got to learn how to use leverage. Wealthy people are not trying to save their way to wealth. They're not working their way to wealth. They're using this thing called leverage. Now, leverage is the ability to earn more income with less effort. And that's what the Bible's full of that. Solomon talked about that in the book of Proverbs. He talks about this thing called leverage. And so I just think, the more
that leverage thing, Pastor Dexter, because that's the stage I was at. When I turned like 45, that's when the light started coming on. Right. And I was like, it's not just in sports. You know how in the NFL there's a salary cap?
Correct.
I told you, in every industry, in every company, there's a salary cap.
There's a salary cap, 100%.
So there's only two ways to get a raise. They give you more money for the same time, or you spend less time making the same money.
Right.
And as you get past 50, it's the latter thing that's going to be more likely than the former thing, which goes to your point about leverage. Listen, we are already burning through time. I want to make sure our audience knows where to find you, where to find the book. I want other faith leaders to get this book. Tell us where the Be Lifted Radio audience can.
Well, they can find me across the board at dexterbjenkins.com. Well, first, start my website, dexterbjenkins.com. Go there, and they can find me there. And then across social media, I'm Dexter B. Jenkins across everything. But my favorite medium is LinkedIn. I really like to hang out there
Same here.
I also got we got a real estate conference coming up on April 4th and 5th in Boston.
Wow, okay.
So they can go to my website and find out about that. And then the book right now is on Kindle. It's on Amazon. So you go there, you can find the book there. And then, as I said, it's coming out in hardback in another or soft cover in another week or two. And so that's how they can find me.
Listen, Pastor Dexter, we're going to have you back again.
Oh, of course. We need to have like a 2-hour show or something.
Right. Man, we need a special.
This we need to do like a barbershop edition.
Hey, I'm with you, bro. I am so with you.
Have a barbershop edition, bring some brothers together, let's talk about this stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, Pastor Dexter, I am so glad you could make time to be with us again. Thank you for joining us on Be Lifted Up Radio.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, sit back. We'll wrap it up. Stay tuned. Listen, we just had a great time with Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, author of the Real Estate Wealth Creator Blueprint. Listen, first of all, get the book, share the book. If you're a faith leader, I would add that to your financial education ministry library. If you don't have one, start one. Add that to your collection and encourage your congregation to implement that education into your communities. And I mean, in your communities, whether they're people that go to your church or not. I just think it's about spreading the word. But more importantly, I think Pastor Jenkins really did hit one of the major themes of this show, which is that faith and the transformation of your mind as a result of your faith leads to abundant life. And you heard us both talk about, we had education, we had role models, we had, I had a great career, and I was making more money than my parents and grandparents ever made. But nothing changed until I had a transformation in my thinking. And that's an act of faith, for you to believe in things that are not what you see. Again, walking by faith and not by sight, and not necessarily what you believe is possible in your own knowledge versus what God is possible through Christ. So listen, you're listening to Be Lifted Up Radio. Thank you for joining us. You can catch this show and every other episode of the show at beliftedupradio.com. That's the letter B, liftedupradio.com. We're also on the Mocha Podcast Network.com. That's podcast plural. You can find us on social, again, at Be Lifted Up Radio on Instagram, Facebook, X, you name it. And you can absolutely catch the show on YouTube. We urge you to subscribe to us on YouTube so you don't miss any of our shows. And you can catch replays on Sirius XM 141 HUR Voices. Listen, I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. This is Be Lifted Up Radio. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.